It is 8 o'clock, so it's time to start our webinar. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Enology webinar series. My name is Andrea Botazato. I am an associate professor and Enology extension specialist with Texas A&M, Texas AgriLife Extension Services. Today's webinar deals with blockchain technology, very of the moment and very interesting technology. And it looks like it's being uptaken in the wine industry. The OIV, the International Organization of Wines and Vines, is supporting this technology. And they had recently this year, they had a full day or 2 days workshop about this type of technology. So clearly interest there. And we are seeing a lot of interest from various governmental bodies in various wine producing countries in this technology. And we have a government representative today with us from the country of Georgia to talk about their perspective towards this technology. With that being said, I would like to introduce the presenters. And the first presenter today is Mr. Garrett Edmondson. He is a certified blockchain specialist located in Austin, Texas. We have Mr. Andrew Thornhill. He is a Cardano Foundation representative and Georgia blockchain pioneer. We have Baia Abuladze, owner and winemaker at Baia's Wine, a winery in Georgia, and an early adopter of this technology. And Mr. Levan Mekhuzla, chairman of the Georgian Wine Agency. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. And without further ado, I will pass the torch to Garrett.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Botazatu. I appreciate the opportunity to speak here. A word of caution here, I am not a wine specialist. I am a technologist and blockchain expert with several years of experience in that industry. And so what I've put together here in this presentation, I've had the help of ChatGPT to generate some images for me. So if something isn't accurate in terms of the wine industry and my images, I'm sorry. But I want to start to begin with. I'm going to give a brief introduction to the blockchain and at a high level describe what it is and how it could be used in the wine industry. As a blockchain specialist myself, I see many industries, particularly within supply chain tracking and tracing use cases, starting to adopt blockchain technologies in various ways. And so I want to briefly cover some of those at a high level, those use cases, and then we will transition to something very specific with Andrew and Baia Winery in the country of Georgia, and talk in more detail about what they have done and what they plan on doing in the future. There are kind of four key things to keep in mind, and so this presentation is targeted at people who probably are not very familiar with blockchains and blockchain technology, but I think there are four fundamental principles to keep in mind when you think about a blockchain and what it is good at and useful for. That was the graphic I was talking about in terms of generating an image based on wine and blockchains. So four aspects of the blockchain that I'd like to emphasize here is one is that makes blockchain technologies unique. One of them being decentralization. So a properly implemented blockchain is decentralized, meaning that there is no central authority that governs or controls the blockchain in any way. So it is a peer-to-peer network. That means that there is no government or company or organization that can, in an authoritative fashion, control what goes on the blockchain or who can interact with it. It is open to all and is public to all. I represent cooperation of what are called node operators. We simply run the blockchain software, and we, about 3,000 of us on the Cardano blockchain, are responsible for keeping the network up and running. The other aspect of a blockchain is immutability, meaning that once data is recorded on the blockchain, it cannot be manipulated, it cannot be changed, and it cannot be deleted in any way. This ensures the integrity of the data that is saved on the blockchain. And as I alluded to before, the other aspect of a blockchain is transparency. All participants in the blockchain can see and access the same information. And so this fosters trust and accountability for the data and the activities that are recorded on the blockchain. Think of like in a supply chain, or in the case of the wine industry, wine operations or retail distribution of wine in a bottle form. The other very important aspect of blockchains is security. So most blockchains like Cardano or Bitcoin, if you've heard of that, use some very standard cryptographic functions or cryptography to secure the data on the blockchains. This makes it very resistant to tampering and manipulation of the data. These cryptographic functions or computer code that run on the blockchain to secure it have been used for many decades and are used by nation states, are used by companies like Microsoft, the FBI, the CIA. Everybody uses the same cryptographic functions. Blockchain has simply repurposed those functions to be able to secure the data that is contained within the blockchains as well. The last portion of this that I will quickly cover here is with these guiding principles in mind about the characteristics of the blockchain, you can use, and I've seen the use of the blockchain to enhance the transparency in the wine production and distribution. Also, you can securely record supply chain and logistics activities to ensure traceability and accountability for real world assets being moved in the world and distributed. This can also help improve efficiency because there is no centralized database. This database is, the blockchain is copied thousands of times around the world. Then anybody can quickly look up this data relative to what is reported on the blockchain and make decisions based on that. And so while blockchain can do a few things very well, in my opinion and in my experience, it is one important component, but not the only component in an overall solution. Blockchain technologies are usually integrated into more traditional databases and computer networks and websites and things of that nature. So from a technical perspective, there's many other components that usually comprise an overall solution, but blockchain can fulfill a critical role in delivering traceability and a trust and helping to reduce counterfeit, in this case, wine and other scenarios like that. So that is what I had in terms of an introduction. And next, we're going to move, I think, to Andrew to describe more in detail how he was able to use blockchain and apply that in Georgia for Baia wine and other wineries there. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Thornhill. I'm an American who lives and works in the country of Georgia, it's specifically Tbilisi. I've been active in Georgia since 2007. I do not work for the Cardano Foundation, but I am in partnership with them. And I've been working with Cardano really since about 2018. I have a company called Proof of Origin, which was basically born in the Cardano Foundation, and now this company is receiving the tech stack from CF to be able to do what we're doing. So we have an initial pilot that was with Baia's Wine back in 2019, 2020. We had 5,000 bottles. These are the first bottles ever put on chain. And basically, the first bottles ever put on chain using public blockchain as the anchor database for track and trace. Basically, we worked with ScanTrust as a partnership. ScanTrust created the QR code labels. And then we basically put the core data of this of the bottles on the Cardano blockchain, and then had the CF build and explore around that so that you could basically take the data from Baia's Wine and look at it on chain. The project was a pretty big success. It was recognized by the Ministry of Agriculture, who ordered a pilot project which is how Levan Mekhuzla came in. And we had a 100,000 bottle pilot in Bolnisi, which is in the area where wine was more or less invented. Or at least, as we can see now from artifacts, it's where wine is the oldest known artifacts of wine were in that area. We also did an MOU with the foundation. The pilot was expanded to 1 million bottles at the Dubai conference last October, early November, and we expect to have 1 million bottles on chain by the end of this coming year, 2025. There is a big problem in wine. I think this is pretty well known. Something like one out of every either 5 or out of every 20 bottles are fraudulent in nature, either in terms of the labeling or the actual contents. Counterfeit goods, in food and wine beverages is absolutely enormous, as it is in many places. And so this is just an attempt to show use case of how public blockchain can be used in this way. Georgia is a really interesting target because they are a government that's very open to technology and new ideas, especially ways that can improve their, let's say, security, their wine security, but also ways that they can, market their wines without changing how the wine was made. So here's some facts and figures over Georgia. It's quite a big part of their economy. Several hundreds of millions of bottles are created each year. That's going to happen. That's actually on the increase. Georgia has been able to combat the global trend of less wine consumption in the world by actually increasing their production and also increasing their exporting. And Levan Mekhuzla and the Wine Agency are big parts of that. For the pilot project, we had a couple of goals that were defined from the wineries, from the National Wine Agency, which is Levan is working with. He's the chairman of. Basically, your wineries are looking for, in many ways, counterfeit production, and indeed there is a big problem with special, unique Georgian wines that enter the marketplace, such as some of the unique grape varieties like Wanchkara and some of the high elevation reds that unfortunately very easily fraudulently made and sold. And we can demonstrate this also with facts and figures of we know how big the area is where this wine can be made, but yet there's millions of more bottles of that sold than possible. The Georgian government is fully aware of this, and they don't have an enormous amount of resources, so we're looking for technology as ways to potentially answer these questions. In our pilot project with Baia's Wine, we had an enormous amount of public engagement. So consumers had the ability to, so each bottle has a QR code, a unique QR code that's impossible to replicate, and through ScanTrust technology. And the QR code, once scanned, gives you information about the wine, about the project, about the winery, and also has some of that logistical information embedded in blockchain, but also gave a link to be able to communicate with the winemaker directly. And we found that was to be very, very successful. And so much so that it increased total markets for Baia's wine. Of course, the National Wine Agency saw that. They were curious about ways that they can increase this technology and increase the data flow. Also, a big part of transparency was what they wanted. As some of you may know, Russia invaded Georgia in 2008 and then subsequently cut off the Georgian imports of wine, which was more than 50% of the Georgian marketplace at the time. So the Georgian Wine Agency and wineries had to very quickly shift the way of making and selling wine. And so the amount of information that was being collected by the Georgian government on the winemakers was enormous. And the Georgian Ministry of Agriculture wanted a way to demonstrate that they were not only above board in collecting, but also way above average in terms of the amount of data collecting. And putting this information on chain was something that was of interest to them. And then, of course, for me, proof of origin, this is a bootstrap company, and this is showing a use case in Georgia. There's been no money that's been transferred from the Georgian government to proof of origin and vice versa. This is simply just showcasing that this technology is possible and able to work. There's been a pretty big investment in terms of the amount of technology on the linking the blockchain, the immutable blockchain that Garrett talked about, to the ScanTrust system. Indeed, the project itself is chain agnostic, but Cardano is an excellent host for this data because of its enormous amount of metadata that's available in each transaction, the speed of the retrieval of that data, and also the fact that you can bulk upload transactions into metadata. So it makes it for a very, very cheap solution when looking at public blockchain for track and trace. Solution, we came up, with the solution. Here's an overview of the Bolnisi pilot, in which we were trying to capture data from each step that we thought would be interesting for the consumer and also for the Georgian government. Again, this is a pilot project, so the final data. There was a question earlier about trade secrets and whatnot, and this was information that was deemed that was willing to be made public by the Bolnisi Wine Association, which is a PDO inside Georgia. And then this slide kind of like goes over that. Essentially, what we did, which is really also amazing, is that in order for Cardano to be a part of in order for the blockchain to be part of the data collecting process, we essentially created the ability to generate export certificates on chain, but also digitally. So essentially the wine, once it's made in Georgia, and before it's exported, it's laboratory tested, and it's created a lot inside the Georgian system to track it. That lot then is, once it's laboratory tested, the laboratory results are sent also to the wine agency, which then authorizes that amount of wine to be exported, which then generates the certificates of conformity and the export documentation. In creating the digital twin by using the system of authentication and also traceability, we essentially were only a few steps away from creating a digital export document. And so we went on ahead and created that. We are in negotiation also with different countries like the UK that would accept the digital documentation as export documentation, in which the core data itself remains in Cardano. Very, very interesting. Well, we also created a web app, an ability for winemakers to upload data, which is then cross-checked by the wine agency. We had Bolnisi pilot milestones. There's a lot of heavy lifting in terms of the government was interested, Bolnisi was interested, GanTrust was interested, Cardano was interested, but putting all these pieces together came basically in my lap. This was a volunteer basis. Again, I've not received any money in payment of kind or any services, but I think it's a very fascinating use case of how immutable public blockchain can be used. And so through that process, we've created a lot of documentation and a lot of, let's say, step-by-steps and a lot of trial and error on basically how to get from point zero to where we are now, which is a successful 100,000 bottles on chain and 1 million bottles coming soon. Like Andrea mentioned, we follow the OIV standards, and they are inside all of our data handling and our data numbers and metrics are all defined by OIV, and Cardano Foundation was working closely with them on creating that standard. And then I have a bunch of I can make this file available for you guys, but there's essentially information about how the web app was created, how the backend system was thought out and then created. The mobile scanning app looks like everything is translated into Georgian, so the winemakers can communicate all this data in Georgian. Each bottle is unique in the system, so it's not a standard QR code that can be printed in bulk. It's one unique code per bottle. We used to use stickers that were applied to the bottles individually. In 2025, already at the end of this year, but in 2025, we'll have unique QR codes printed on the back label, and that will make it easier for larger winemakers to apply the QR code by embedding it directly by advanced printing technique. We can embed a unique QR code into the back label at very, very low cost and put that on the bottle. Again, we had the Beta Explorer created by the Cardano Foundation, because once the data is in public blockchain, it's hashed inside metadata, which is not super duper easy to read. So the foundation built a Beta Explorer that basically pulls the metadata from the Cardano and spits it out in a way where it makes sense. So you can actually see A, if it's fake, B, what the information is, which ties it back into the winery and whatnot. This is more about GanTrust, about how their systems work. This is red sticker on the right hand side upper is an example of what the sticker looks like now, and this is for the 100,000 bottles that went out in 2024. We're a direct partner with a wine agency, and so we use their logos, and these are individually placed on each bottle. the code itself is tamper-proof. You can take a picture of it and use it, but if you try to print it again from that picture, it will not work. This is more information about the blockchain, which Garrett covered pretty well. The value proposition, indeed, there's many areas that this can work, and not just in in winemaking, application design, counterfeit. Again, we can talk about this stuff as we go out. Thanks.
With that, we can move on to Baia. And Baia, if you could share your experience with your winery in general, and then the adoption of this technology, and how your feelings about it, and how it has impacted your winery.
Hello everyone, and now it's very important time because we finish all the first and secondary fermentations, and now it's time to work for racking and like clarifying and seeing the lab analysis and tasting, and soon we will also start blending our whites and reds. So it's very picky time in the wineries everywhere, but I'm very happy to be here and to speak about our winery first, and then the collaboration with Cardano Foundation. So the winery is established back to 2015. So it's a very family-based production, and we are fourth generation of the winemakers in West Georgia Emirati region. Now our winery consists 18 hectares. Half of them is planted because we start as a new generation, firstly like labeling the wine and then selling them, and successfully we are now working worldwide almost. We do work in 14 export markets, and I can say that the US is the largest market for bias wine in the export shapes, but not only export but also local market is very unique and important for us, and we do distribute the wines by ourselves, so there are many works behind the winery itself. And at the same time, the team of the winery is my siblings, my sister, my brother, and me, and also the parents. And in total, we are like also having very nice young team with our neighborhood who is coming and helping itself. And also like wine tourism was additional work which we had back to 2017, and Andrew is like Andrew knows how much people we are hosting there, and back to 2017, we also like were able to start our first export in Austria, and step by step, then we move from the US to EU market, and then also Asian market, almost while pandemic time. So successfully, we were also like very happy to meet Andrew, and then like the project with Cardano Foundation we received from him, because the farmers are always like as usually not very technological people, and we were super interested in the project, and we start working together on this project, and we were like receiving advices about the process by itself. So finally we are having very important value in the end for the wines we do produce, because the varieties we do work are very indigenous and very local based. And like I should mention that Georgia is very diverse with its own all the varieties and also the style of vinification, because we do vinify wines in the clay pots. Maybe you see on the picture over there. So like clay pots are buried inside the ground, and the name of them is kvevri. So at the same time, like we do still use skin maceration, which is an old and ancestral method of vinification, which adds extra tannins and texture and taste of the wine in the end. But also like additionally the varieties we are using are very diverse, from Chardonnay or Pinot Noir or Merlot by itself. For example, in our winery we do work with 5 indigenous varieties. 3 of them are white, Tsoligouri, Tsitska and Grahuna, and also 2 of them are red, Aldasturi and Otshanuri Sapere. And now we are able that the whole process starting from viticulture itself, because viticulture is the main part for our winery for now. And also we are having an ongoing project with new wines, 3-4 years old wines, which needs a lot of attention and have work by itself. But final product, one inside the bottle, is having a very good chance that the final consumer can easily scan and get an idea where the wine came from, what's the terroir of the place, and also like what's the variety by itself, and how the process was step by step made. So like now we are having the QR codes on the label. Also, additionally, we are having a very good chance that we are having new web page made by Andrew and the Cardano behind, and now we are feeling that farming is not only old school method but also like very modernized IT sphere. So I would like to answer your questions in the end, and thank you again for inviting our winery in the today's.
Thank you, Baia. Thank you. We'll come back with some questions after Levan talks about his perspective and the government's perspective on this technology.
Hello. First of all, thank you very much for having me in this webinar and making this topic important, of course, as the government and as the National Wine Agency. I would like to introduce a little bit what we are doing and what we are dealing with. We are a body that is certifying all the wine that is, all the Georgian wine that is sold in market, like inside the country or exported outside. So as Andrew, and thank you, Andrew, for this wonderful presentation, has mentioned, we are trying to ensure with this project, we are trying to ensure traceability and ensure transparency of our wine, of our product. Andrew also mentioned that unfortunately there is quite lots of fraud internationally in alcoholic beverages industry, not only wine but other alcoholic beverages. There was some scandal in the beginning or in the middle of the 20th century concerning some different wines from different countries. Once again, we look at this as something to ensure that we exactly know what we are producing and we are transparent about what we are certifying and what we are exporting and what we are placing in the marketplace. So as Andrew has mentioned, the QR codes are absolutely unique. You cannot counterfeit them. So there is one QR code for each bottle, and the information that is provided behind this QR code is first of all the information about the winery, about the production, and also about the certification and about all the procedures this wine has been through. As Andrew mentioned, at this stage, this is pilot project, and we are very carefully monitoring its development. And we see also different opportunities. There is opportunity to more or less be in direct contact with your consumer. Like we can have data of where this QR codes have been scanned, and our producers have the opportunity to have this data. So that's also another point of this pilot project. I mean, placing QR codes on bottles are not something new. There is some different countries and geographical indications that use this technology, but as we know, we are first or one of the first that are using blockchain technology to store our data behind QR code, which we think adds more trust to our wine and adds more transparency to the procedures that we are doing here in our agency. So basically, that is a short answer for this question. Yeah, we are looking forward for the results of this 1 million bottles that Andrew mentioned. We are also happy that our producers like Baia are eager to participate in this pilot project, and we want to thank you, Baia, and to all these wineries that are happy to be involved. So let's see, and I'm sure that we, through this project, we will reach our two, as I said, main goals. One is to ensure the transparency and traceability of Georgian wine, and to have communication, direct communication, to give information and have feedback to our consumers and customers. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So if I understand correctly, you mentioned, Levan, the QR codes and the fact that you can see where these QR codes are being scanned. So it's a two-way street. Not only can the consumer see information about the wines, but you can see information about where the wine ends up being in the world. So you can locate these, where your wine ended up. Is that right?
Yes, that's absolutely right. Thank you for this question. As Contrast can provide this data, and they do provide this data to us, so we can see this.
And also, aside from Baia, which was one of the first adopters of the technology, my understanding is that you have another part of this project is in one of your viticultural regions there in Georgia. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically, when we are talking about fraud or counterfeiting, the main target is usually wines with specific geographical indication. Like, let's talk internationally, like it's for counterfeiters, it's more profitable, let's say, to counterfeit Bordeaux or Burgundy than just French wine. So we also try to focus on our GIs, but not only. And one of them is Bolnisi, which Andrew has already mentioned. And it was a small, newly established GI. So that's why we have chosen to start with this small GI, which represents about 50 small wineries, and we are talking about 100,000 barrels per year maximum production. So that was the first step, the first pilot, and the second one is already broader one, and Andrew has also mentioned this. It is 1 million barrels pilot, which we want to cover in 2025, and this already includes some let's say big wineries that export wine worldwide and international wine.
Thank you. Okay, I think there was a question, Andrew, about the product being sequestered.
Yeah, this is a good question. So there's a couple of ways in which this particular question needs to be addressed. And the first one, and by this person, Andrew Chalk, is very good one. Is blockchain necessary here, right? So does blockchain solve a problem? And the answer to that is usually no. All right. And so blockchain does not make the world go round. It does not answer every question. It does not make something better. In some ways, when technology can make things worse. Now, I am a blockchain person, so I develop blockchain technology. This is a case in which a blockchain efficiently and successfully replicates a system that's already in place and does so immutably. Means data that is being put onto this chain is data that isn't normally available to the public, A. B, it's data that potentially could be falsified after it's published. And C, it's data that can be and should be used when making product selection. So and one of the biggest issues then, to answer the question more specifically, is that, hey, this is not going to work because the data itself, the wines are not sequestered. Well, in this case, they are, all right? And the way that they are is that The data itself is coming from Levan, right? So Levan's agency is monitoring, measuring hourly, certainly daily, this information. Baia is unable to sell her wine abroad unless she gets the export documentation necessary that's provided by Levan's agency, right? So this is not a process that's done inertly. This is an overt process that requires direct communication between the winery, the laboratories that test it, the importer exporters, and also the agency. So the information that's being pushed to chain is information that's authenticated by the Georgian Wine Agency, which we have to trust is a priori correct. And indeed, if that is not correct, what something that blockchain does is that it provides a timestamp record so that we can go back and say, hey, and this has never happened to us, but say, for example, in some other country, in some other situation where this information was incorrectly applied for the first time, and then they try to go back and fix it, or wine was sold with incorrect markings and then later found out. We have a very, very specific timestamp and a record to show, hey, this was actually published here, so now there's accountability. And so accountability is provided in an area where it never was before. So the data is only as good as the data going out is only as good as the data going in, which is absolutely correct. But the accountability factor, as well as being able to publish and publicly identify the actors, let's say, the people that are involved in putting the data in, become a much more important process, and that can become a much bigger issue when, let's say, dealing outside of wine, or maybe like computer parts that end up on a rocket, landing in someone's country. These are things that are very important. And in the wine agency, the wine business is one where this data can and should be used correctly. And I believe that this is a good example and a use case of it. And so that's why we specifically worked. The pilot project was me working with Baia and her family to basically show how public blockchain can be used. But once we got to a pilot project, then that's government down, right? So it's not winery up. I made a decision together with the Cardano Foundation that we were going to partner with the Georgian Wine Agency and publicly publish their data on the wines as they go to the consumer. And I have full faith and trust in Levan's system. We did a full audit of how they measure and monitor these things. His office, in fact, actually moves. He has a mobile office that, depending on where the wine is made, the whites are in one area, the reds are another area. He doesn't stay in Tbilisi. He's where the wine is being made. His people are on the ground. They hire seasonal workers that measure and weigh and monitor. They have people that are inside the laboratories that are checking and double checking. And they do this not because there was an enormous amount of fraud before. They do this because each country that's importing wine has a different standard and different set of metrics and measurements that they need in order to get that wine. So Georgia, as a small country that produces way more than it can consume, has to comply with all these different metrics and matrices. And so this is a way of trying to publish that data. I hope that answers the question. It is a very good one, and it's something that that comes up regularly.
How do you keep trade secrets confidential?
Yeah, that was the next one. So just a few weeks ago, I was on a podcast with another webinar with the head of DHL Customs, Global Customs, and basically some of the early forays into private blockchain that was used for goods and cargo movement were very unsuccessful. Not because the data itself was immutable or near immutable, even in a private system, in a central system, but it was unsuccessful because it revealed trade data that was harmful to the clients, and that is a big issue. So DHL is looking at this issue again, and indeed working with me more on where that trade data needs to be public, such as like China has a certain amount of of trade with Japan that's under a certain contract in this convention and whatnot, and so certain information needs to be relayed publicly. There are many cases in which trade data actually cannot or should not be revealed, and that's to protect pricing, to protect, movement of cargo. It also protects like buyers and sellers and whatnot. So in this particular case, one of the reasons why it took quite a bit of time between Baia's pilot project and then our first 100,000 bottle public government pilot was that we had to go through round and round and round of lawyers that were looking at, what data itself, specifically each data point, what can and cannot be shared, both for protection and data privacy laws in Georgia, but also in trade rules and laws of the winemakers. Baia is not interested for everyone to know how much wine she ships to Sweden or how much she sends to the US. And this is information that really, in many ways, cannot and should not be shared. So what we are doing is we came up with, in this particular project, and indeed each project should be handled, I think, the same way. But in this particular project, we identified with the winemakers what data could and should be shared. Each winemaker had to opt in for that as well. So none of this was done without the winemaker's knowledge. Bolnisi Wine, the PDO, represents about 50 winemakers. 31 of those winemakers participated, right? So there was a few that just didn't get the message and they didn't get the memo, but there were a few that did not want to participate because of the information they did not want to be shared, and also a little bit of mistrust in new technology. So in this particular case, the data that's being shared and being pushed to public is that we are individually counting each bottle on an internal let's say spread that's shown to Levan and to the winemakers. That information itself is not exactly public. The lot itself is public. So the lot, if you scour through the hash of the Cardano blockchain, you will see the lot data. So the lot data is shared, but the amount of bottles inside that lot, as well as the total number of bottles that were sent, in each transaction, is not shared. And that was an agreement that again came, through many rounds or whatever. There are many cases in trade in which that information could not and should not be shared. And this is all very new technology as well. This is very new. Again, Baia was the very first winemaker in the history of the world to use public blockchain as a core database anchor for track and trace data. The country of Georgia is the very first country in the world to use public database, public blockchain, immutable data as core data for track and trace. There's a lot of lessons to be learned, a lot of pluses and minuses. Indeed, I've learned an enormous amount in the last year and a half for this. I do not have the answer to all of these questions, but these are very good ones and the ones that are very important. I can tell you, however, that through this technology, the Baia's wines have sold more wines than without. And Georgia is in a better position now than it was with its wine. And companies like DHL are looking very specifically at how this technology and how these systems can better track, for example, how many solar cells are made in China and then sold to another nation is financed by EBRD. That's a very specific project. So there are ways in which this stuff needs to be protected and ways in which it needs to be better understood, and in many ways experimented with to get to the right answer. Hope that answers.
Thank you. Yes. I have a comment here that I would like to read from Edward from Niagara region, about 20 minutes away from Dr. Bodazato's old stomping ground. Hi, Edward. Good to have old friends here at Brock University in the Greater Canadian US region. He says this is a very interesting technology application as more and more consumers are being priced out of some wine producing regions of the world. Thus, so quotes, thus increasing profitability of counterfeiting. The American market is increasingly becoming aware of Georgian wines, particularly Rkatsiteli and Saperavi. As this market exposure increases demand, the potential for fraud increases as well. There are few wineries in the Niagara and Finger Lakes region that grow, produce, sell the aforementioned Georgian grape varieties. In terms of going to market with products, this technology is an additional selling aspect to add validity to the wine. Is this technology more valuable now, or does the work begin now, proving to be more valuable later? Thank you.
So first of all, I've had some of the Saperavis from up there in the Finger Lakes, and I forget the name. Levan and Baia, remember his name, Lisa Granick actually introduced me to them at Raw Wine New York back in, 2021 or something. Amazing people. I believe the seeds are originally from Georgia, from Kakheti. And they also have a Saperavi festival up there in New York, which is just incredible. So yeah, very interesting question. I would say yes, I mean, you first of all, I mean, first as a side comment, you picked up on the marketing aspect, right? So when it comes to like, getting this project across and getting sign off from the Georgian government, we had to have many different components addressed. And so for me, I care about data immutability. I care about, pushing data to blockchain. I care about like showing, how important public blockchain is for like real world applications, blah, blah, blah. The winemakers want to sell more wine, right? And the winemakers want to sell more wine at a higher price point. And that's a critical component. And so it is true that as an emerging technology, well, let's say as a caveat, it has been true up until now that this technology has increased the sale of wine in the aforementioned areas. And in each of the projects that we've worked with, it has increased exposure and increased the wine sales. The certain amount of that is certainly from it being new, right? And just being, hey, I've never heard of this and whatnot. And I wanted to comment earlier when Levan and I looked at the data from ScanTrust in Dubai. And again, Tudor, just so you know, the ScanTrust technology is patented. It is patented technology. However, the systems that we use are all open source, and they're all published to GitHub. But that we were looking at data and we saw that there were bottles in the 100,000 bottles pilot that were scanned in Brazil. They were scanned like in Honduras. They were scanned in all these areas in which Georgia does not actively sell wine. And it was very interesting. And so what we also see is that one bottle is being scanned multiple times. All right. So this means that we've engaged the customer. In some way, we'd be able to attract or magnetically attract their attention, and they've either passed it to someone or they've shown it again. It is pretty cool. Like when you scan the bottle, you don't need any technology. You don't need to download any app. There's no secondary questions. Boom, it pops up. Tons of information. I can share some scans here for you guys to look at if you want. It has pictures. It shows the process of the winemaking. It tells the dates, what's going. It also has a map, and it shows basically how the wine got from the winemaker to you. It doesn't show each logistical step because our importers are not doing that. But you see on a map in Georgia, boom, where it is, and it's kind of cool, right? You're like, oh my God, this winery is like 5,000 miles away. And it's interactive, right? And so it gives you the ability to communicate with the winemaker. We had actually had to modify. Was very kind. She says they have a website from the foundation. That's true. Because Baia had so many requests for people asking questions on Facebook and Instagram that we had to basically put some information on her website to answer questions. So it works, right? So it works. Now, I think we're at the beginning of that. I think this is all the very beginning. And again, we're at the beginning of how blockchain can work in these environments anyway. But yeah, I think that we're in the beginning and the hard work is being done now. I can tell you that in Baia's pilot, the total cost per bottle for being involved in it was prohibitive. It wasn't $1 a bottle, but it was more than like 50 cents. In the pilot project, we got that down significantly, but still somewhat prohibitive. And now with 1 million bottles, where we finally achieved a level of technology and printing where we can do this for near 1 penny or sub penny. My goal is for it to be sub 1 penny per bottle. And so and this is all happening in the last 3 years, right? So we're in the beginning, and there's I think it's an additional selling aspect. As we know, global wine consumption is going on the decline. That's not to say no one's drinking wine anymore. It's just saying they're drinking less of it. And so to fight for those remaining consumers and to add consumers is a big plus. blockchain world generally is younger people that are excited about their communities. These are not traditional winemakers or wine drinkers. And so being able to touch them in a way and to maybe grab their attention and have them buy a bottle, potentially at a premium, is, that's something important. And it's certainly something important for the winemakers. So yeah, I think that the reason why, sorry for the long answer, but the reason why I think that it's a value add is because of how we approached it, right? So rather than being the winemaker and saying, hey, look at our stuff, big flashy neon light above our bottle, we're actually working government down to say, hey, look at our bottle, but also realize the contents are more than likely, correct, and, more than likely factual. And you can trace that process, and then you can learn more about the wine, learn more about the winemaker, and then boom. So I think the value add comes in the trust that is established through doing it the right way. And yeah, that's kind of a very, very long answer to your question, but thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. We have a follow-up to that. Oh, and I just wanted to make a comment. Speaking of Niagara and Canadian wine and Niagara wine, we have the ice wine being produced there in the Niagara region, and that is one product that for a very long time has been falsified on the international market. So I can see how this technology could help with that type of product as well. It's a very specific product, very limited volume, high price. So being able to certify the authenticity of that product, I can see how that can be favorable. A follow-up from Edward to what was discussed, the track and trace component is a very powerful marketing tool. There is one wine store that sells Georgian Saperavi, just one. Okay. I asked the owner why they stock the wine, and they stated that they have a few customers who request it. Being able to pinpoint where the customers are is an existential shift in target marketing. Are there companies developing or using this technology in the wine industry, working directly with producer and distributors to target market? That's in the Western New York region.
Yes, me. I'm doing that. That's exactly what Proof of Origin is doing. So we offered all of this, for free to the Georgian to the country of Georgia. Baia paid zero cost, except for a little bit of aggravation, with dealing with a lot of requests. So I'm receiving tons of information, tons of data points, tons of valuable experience, and I'm out there raising capital for Proof of Origin, which hope will be part of it. I am a huge lover of Georgian wine. I never drank wine till I went to Georgia, and so I'm a very, very happy person living there. It's been very kind to me as a country, and I want to give something back. And more than my taxes, for whatever question. That's kind of a strange question, but yeah. So yes, I'm doing that. I'm building that system, and I'm not alone. There's many people out there that are looking at target marketing and whatnot. So I'm one of the first. I'm certainly the biggest project, and for the enterprise scale using public blockchain, I'm the biggest, hands down. But I'm not the only, and I'm probably not even the first. So
I see a follow-up. Yeah, to that, but I'm not sure I understand the question. What value, Andrew, can you now provide producers like Baia about where her wine goes?
Well, I can let Baia answer that question specifically because I know for a fact that there were 2 or 3 markets that were open as a direct result of the 5,000 bottle pilot. And that came about because the Cardano Foundation posted a few tweets, so a couple of pictures, of the project, and I think Singapore was open, right, Baia, and one of the other provinces in Canada. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, that was as a result of the project. As a result of the scanning, that's something that I need to sit down with them and kind of go over and look at. But yeah, for sure. But you can answer.
But yeah, additionally, also we still are receiving emails or social media requests about the collaboration by itself, and as we find out, there are many people who are following Cardano foundation by itself and blockchain system by itself, and those young people or not, they are really interested to find out the product where it is selling, and it really helps in the end to increase the international sales for our like small family winery itself. So that was very successful trip for us.
Thank you. A comment from Mr. Paul Bonarigo. Meryl and I taught direct to consumer. This offers direct targeted marketing. Yes. Thank you for that comment. Any other questions or anything else that anyone would like to add? Garrett, Levan?
I will just want to say thank you, first of all, and I would like to just specify that the winery behind the Saperavi in Finger Lakes is Dr. Konstantin Frank's winery, who seems to be the pioneer of Finger Lakes winemaking region and one of the first to plant Saperavi in the United States. And yeah, I want to say, as Andrew also mentioned, that we every year host their Saperavi festival, which is small scale at this stage, but if you want to join, you can taste some Saperavis from Finger Lake and also from Georgia, of course. And here Edward also mentioned that he's Saperavi producer from Chateau Niagara. Great. So thank you for that, Edward. And also, I have noticed that Paul has been in Georgia in 2014, and he mentions that the wine industry was very progressive and hospitable. So yeah, we made a lot of progress, and I maybe Paul will have a chance to come because there is huge changes from 2014, and you can see how our wine industry has progressed since that. Thank you.
Thank you. Garrett, do you want to add anything?
No, just thank you everybody for their participation. It is an evolving technology that only works as good as we are willing to cooperate together as people and industries to develop standards and then record that data on a blockchain. The real work is done in the real world, and that this technology simply can assist in making those processes more efficient. And so excited to see where this evolves and develops too.
Thank you. Just a final mention before we wrap up. I know this kind of technology is being used in other parts of the world as well. We have Tudor here from Blazar Labs, who is working with the Moldovan government, as far as I know, in a similar fashion. So there's a lot of interest, especially in European countries, as far as I can tell, but I'm pretty sure this will spread outwards towards other geographical areas. So with that, if there are no further questions or comments, yes, Andrew?
I wanted to thank you, Doctor, for putting this together. Just for you all to know, she has been putting this together for the last month or two and keeping us in the loop and keeping us in contact. She reached out to Cardano. She got pushed around person to person, whatever. And finally she landed in the right place. And then has been, reminding us every couple of days, hey, this is happening. So this is, clearly your work of love, for you, and we feel it. So thank you for having us. Thanks for putting this together. Blockchain is one of these kind of cool industries in which everyone is really pretty happy to share and help each other out and work together. And yes, there's some profit motive at the end of the day somewhere. But for now, we're all just trying to figure things out. And so I know that this podcast, this webinar will be recorded and pushed out. Please feel free to reach out to me or reach out to the doctor to get to me or to Baia or to Levan. And maybe we can answer some questions and help us along. Also, good to see Tudor here. He's a pioneer in Moldova. I've been talking with him for years. And basically what I'm doing in Georgia, he's like just right behind. I mean, he's right on the cusp of putting that together. And especially with the new government there, I think he'll likely be successful. So super cool.
Yes, indeed. Super cool. All right. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your time. I know the hour is strange in Georgia, and really, really appreciate it. With that, I will say goodbye, and I will see everyone next time. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You too.